Hey there, brilliant thinkers. We're genuinely excited to welcome you once again to Mainly Facts. Are you prepared to embark on today's enchanting journey? Let's uncover the marvels that lie ahead together.
Story 1. Am I the a-hole for refusing to replenish a college trust for my deceased husband's affair child? I, 52 female, am in an unusual situation and need an outside perspective, but want to maintain my anonymity. 18 years ago, it was revealed at my husband's funeral that he had a pregnant mistress, 40 female. Obviously, I didn't just take the woman's word for it and stated that she wouldn't get a cent until there was a DNA test. When it was proven true, I was devastated, but agreed to set up a trust for the child for college and agreed to let him live in one of my rental properties in a good area rent-free until her child was 18. She had to pay for utilities. She agreed, and I made it clear that I wasn't going to do anything else for her or the child. I also made it clear that I wouldn't take on the responsibility of fostering a relationship between our children, and that it would be my husband's side of the family's job. Fast forward 12 years, and the mistress's child got sick and needed medical treatment. She didn't have enough money for what insurance wouldn't cover and reached out to me for support. I reminded her of what our original agreement was and to borrow money from relatives for assistance. She said her credit wasn't good enough for a loan at the time and she didn't have anyone who she could borrow the money from. When I wasn't budging, she got upset and accused me of being a monster for not helping a child in need. I reminded her that I already helped her child by setting up a college trust, but she could use some of that money for the costs if she really needed it. She agreed and her child pulled through. Now that the child is 18 and intending to go to college in the fall of 2021, the mistress reached out to me about the trust and was upset when she found out that the amount was much less than what was originally agreed upon. I reminded her it was less because some of the money was used for medical bills and that I never said I would put the money back in. I also informed her that I was going to start charging her rent the following year and she would need to pay or move out. I didn't care that she was upset because I was always straightforward about the situation, but now my mother-in-law and sister-in-law are starting to say that it's unfair to the child. I don't see it that way because the mistress had at least 6 more years to figure something out, so am I the a-hole? No, you're not the a-hole. I do not believe that you're the a-hole at all. You set up a trust for a child that is not even yours, and you gave them a place to live for 18 years only paying utilities. I think that's pretty generous and reasonable. Like, you shouldn't be expected to do more. Honestly, most people wouldn't even have done that much for them. And the fact that there's not as much money for the child to go to college, look, I got very little money for going to college. Now, granted, yes, I have debts for college that I'm paying off, but still, there are other ways to pay for it if the kid wants to go to college. And that mom has had 18 years to set aside some of her own money for college and do some of her own stuff or whatever. So, no, it's not on you. Like, you could, it would be really nice and generous, but I really don't believe that you should have to do that, and you should not feel guilty about the money you've given them and stuff you've already done for them not being enough. No, that's weird to me. Story 2. You want a meeting to discuss our phone account? Okay, let's have a meeting. I'm not sure if this belongs in petty revenge or malicious compliance, for there's a little of both. So sorry if this has been put in the wrong place. Either way, I've enjoyed my malicious revenge compliance, so I hope you do. For the past few years, our business has been receiving telemarketing calls from an offshore call center trying to make appointments for Optus Business Center. Every time they called, we'd politely tell them we're not interested and to remove us from their list, and they'd promise not to call again. You can probably tell by my use of the words every time that having ourselves removed from the list didn't work. It didn't work the first time, and it didn't work the 50th time. Offshores are cheap and get paid per appointment, so they would get quite aggressive. It was clear that a new strategy needed to be found, as it was taking too long to get them to bugger off. So began my campaign of malicious compliance / petty revenge. Hi, we're calling from Optus Business Center, and we can save you 40% on your mobile phone bill. Can we come and see you tomorrow at 11 a.m.? Can you save me 40% of my mobile bill? That's like 60 grand a month. What? How many phones do you have? 150 or so that I'm responsible for directly, plus a few others. The appointment is quickly confirmed. The next day, a salesman calls me up saying he's running early. Can we meet earlier? I refused. Our appointment is for 11 a.m. after all. 11 a.m. rolls around and he walks. We sit down in reception and go through the greetings. I then ask him if it's possible to make the telemarketing calls stop now. He assures me that it is, and so I stand up, shake his hand, and thank him for coming in. What? That's it? You could have said that over the phone. I point out that we did, many times, and it didn't work. And I hoped that this waste of his time, 45 minutes trips from Homebush to Sydney, would perhaps teach him to mend his ways. Over the past 2 years, they've sent out 5 different reps to see us. They call for meetings, we accept them, shine them on about the value of the account, and they roll in to be greeted by me dressed in a chicken suit, made to wait in our meeting room for 20 minutes before being asked to be removed from the list, being turned away at the door. They sent 2 reps that time. I'm posting this today because it was visit number 6 and it was the best yet. We got a repeat customer. I sat him down in the meeting room and we played the video recording of our last meeting. Is that you? Yes, it is me. Didn't I follow up? Did we have a good meeting? I pointed out that I certainly enjoyed our last meeting and zoomed forward in the video to the part where I explain that we didn't have 500 mobile accounts and he needed to please remove us from their list or you could see his heart break, which it did again, once he realized that whatever account he thought he was being discussed today was not going to be discussed, which we also have on video so we can go all Inception when he shows his face again. While I will have some small amount of sympathy for these salespeople because they're just people who wanna, they're just trying to make a living. Probably a lot of them, they're not, they're just another cog in the machine of the crappy company they work for. But when you're that insistent and when you're not taking people off a call list and when you're just being like that, sorry, yeah, you got that stuff coming. I'm sorry. I feel bad that you have to deal with that and it makes your day suck, but you're just making other people's days sucks. If you give suck, you get suck. Suck breeds suck. It's a world of suck. Just stop sucking. Story 1. Am I the a-hole for getting mad at my wife for her jokes about me not helping around the house with our baby? My wife and I both work. Only difference is she actually goes into the office and I'm still working from home. We have a 10-month-old daughter and I've been basically a stay-at-home dad on top of working my regular day job. It was stressful as hell when my wife finished her maternity leave, but luckily my work is pretty flexible so I'm not usually super busy. Most of the day I'm replying to emails on my phone with my daughter and her carrier or taking conference calls while she's napping. I also do the cleaning around the house because I'm a total neat freak and order or cook dinner too if I have the time. Then in the evenings my wife takes over so I have some leisure time. On Sunday, we went to have lunch at her sister's house. First time we've all seen each other in a while. They ask us how life's going with a new baby, and my wife starts joking about the house being a mess when she gets home and her having to clean it up because I've been too busy playing with our daughter all day to do it myself. When her sister's husband asks how I manage, I admit it does get overwhelming sometimes, and my wife once again chimed in saying, I call her constantly throughout the day over little things, like not being able to find our daughter's binky or needing her help because my daughter won't stop crying and I have no idea what to do. She also laughed about how every day when she gets home, she just prays I didn't burn the house down. I know it was all said in a lighthearted joking around way, but it really hurt my feelings. Everyone was chuckling except me, so my wife kissed my cheek, telling me not to take it too seriously, and she appreciates that I put in the effort. So I straight up told her, well, I don't appreciate you acting like I'm useless when I'm the one at home taking care of her all day and cleaning the house. My wife didn't know how to respond to that, and we changed the subject. She was in a serious mood after we left because I embarrassed her, and it wouldn't have hurt for me to let her joke around a little because she knows I help out a lot. I've been distant with her, not talking much when she gets home, and she's mad at me for taking it too seriously. Even her sister says I'm overreacting, but I just don't see why she thought it was okay to paint me as the cliché useless man-child husband. Now I have my wife saying I'm being a bit of a butt for still holding this against her, and she doesn't see why it's a big deal to me. Part of me just feels hurt, and I'd like an apology, but another part wonders if I'm being a butt for how I'm acting with her. Okay. I know some folks like teasing, joking and stuff. There's kind of a line with it. It's like, sometimes it's okay, but like, this person's clearly working very hard. They're stressed out, but they're doing a lot. And she did all this kind of joking, just making fun of him for like, oh, useless husband, oh my gosh. And then like, when he wasn't like loving it, she was just like, oh, I know, you try or whatever. Like, it just doesn't feel great. Like, I don't know. Jokes, if you're going to make jokes at someone's expense, you should make sure that they're kind of okay with it, or you should know what the limit is. Maybe his reaction to it immediately was a little bit much. Like, I might have waited until afterward to be like, hey, I really actually didn't appreciate the way you joke about that. I work really hard and it really kind of diminished how I feel in front of your family. Like, it would have been nice for you to go, oh my gosh, he's doing so much. I'm so appreciative, what a team we make. So yeah, I think I'm mostly on his side. I think his reaction might have been a little bit harsh in the moment, but I also kind of understand it. That's kind of a crappy thing to do. Story 2. Refuse to give a painkiller to someone crying in pain? Congrats on failing your final. 2 years ago, I used to share an apartment with my sister and 2 other roommates. In the flat next to us lived 3 girls whom we've known for years, as we all used to live in the same dorm years ago, plus their 2 new roommates who we didn't know well. The other girls were messy and kind of immature because they were younger than us, but we all mostly got along since we go way back. This one time, my sister and one of our roommates got into a huge argument with the girls from the other flat because of them taking utensils and clothes from our place without permission and losing them. I didn't participate in the argument, but there was obvious tension between the 2 flat residents. Anyway, a few days after that, after a long day of being cooped up in the library preparing for a difficult final, I got home late at night and there was only one of my roommates home that night. Pretty much, as soon as I got home, my face started swelling up and my tooth started aching like crazy. I was in so much pain I started crying and there were no painkillers and I had no way to get into the pharmacy that late at night. My roommate, who also had nothing to do with the argument earlier, knocked on the door of our next-door neighbors, and one of the newer roommates, who we barely knew, answered the door. My roommate then explained the situation to her and that I'm in excruciating pain and asked if she could borrow some painkiller. The girl looks my roommate up and down and tells her, oh, I have painkillers, but I'm not going to give them to her, because I'm the sister of the girl who got into a silly argument with her roommates. Obviously, I'm stunned someone can be this petty, but I let it go, and I survived the night. Now, here for the pettiness on my behalf. A few days after, I happen to be home late at night, and I hear the doorbell ring. I open the door, and lo and behold, it's the same girl who refused to spare me an ibuprofen a few days ago. Except of being snarky, she looked super distraught and defeated. She looked both surprised and relieved I was the one who answered the door that night. She opened her mouth. I'm sorry, I don't know how to say this. My charger died on me and I have a final tomorrow morning and a submission now, and I just started preparing. I know you have one like mine and I was wondering if I could borrow yours? Obviously, she was down on her luck that day because I wasn't my usual generous self. I looked her up and down and said, no, sorry, I'm using it right now, and shut the door in her face. This might be the pettiest thing I've ever done in my life, but I don't exactly hate myself for it. Oh, neighbors, I keep telling you every single day to just let the little things go and don't start feuds. Don't start getting all snippy and trying to get revenge for nonsense that's just so minor. But no, you keep doing it. You keep going at each other and you start these feuds. And once you do something, the other person does something and it just escalates. Granted, is a toothache more important than a final? No, a final's probably way bigger deal. But, so it's like, is this equal? Not necessarily, but is it still kind of deserved? Yeah. Why, if you're going to be crappy to someone and then go to them and be like, help, they're probably not going to want to help. You kind of did it to yourself. Just be nice. Story 3. Neighbor's dog kills coworker's cat. Coworker ruins their Christmas. Hey folks, I know it's probably pretty obvious, but content warning. There will be some talk of animal death in this story, so if you don't want to hear anything like that, like I kind of don't, then scroll to the time code the editor has on screen right now to skip this story. Quick note, I was part of this story, but not the dealer nor receiver of the revenge. Years ago, I used to work with a receptionist in a vet clinic named Margaret. Margaret was and still is a very sweet 65-year-old woman who had been at this practice since it was opened some 40 years ago. She always had a smile, a joke, compliments, and baked goods for your birthday. She never had an unkind word to say about anyone. She was seriously one of the coolest people I'd ever worked with, and she basically knew everyone, from our regular clients to our mailman's granddaughter. The only bad thing about Margaret, and this was not her fault, was that she and her family lived next to one of the trashiest, nastiest families I'd ever met that had 2 even nastier pit bulls. I'm talking nastier than crap that had been hoarded by dung beetles for years nasty. And these dogs were constantly escaping and terrorizing the neighborhood, even trying to get into her house. Margaret had asked them more than once to please keep the dogs contained, especially since she had an elderly fat cat named Smokestack, and these pits had attacked smaller animals before. The family basically told her to rot in hell, that they knew what they were doing. How dare she accuse the breed, yada yada, basically blowing her off. Margaret knew there had been reports filed against her neighbors, but nothing had been done about it really. So she made sure to keep Smokestack in the house to keep him safe and was very careful not to let him out. If you've been paying attention up until this point, you'll notice I'm using the word was and had regarding old Smokestack, and it was as awful as you think. 3 weeks before Christmas, Margaret had the day off and was in the garage with Smokestack fiddling with some Christmas decorations. Unbeknownst to her, the pits next door got out and broke through the bottom of her garage door. They went right for Smokestack before she could blink and started to tear the cat apart. Margaret screamed for help, and it was only when her son and husband came out with a baseball bat that they were able to free Smokestack from the jaws of these dogs. I was working that day and will never forget when she came in crying harder than I had ever seen anyone cry in my life, clutching a poor dying Smokestack in her arms. Her husband had to hold her while we tried to bring Smokestack back, but we couldn't do it. It would have taken a miracle of God and then some, and he passed away. A truly crap way to go in what should have been the golden years of his fat cat life. Margaret sat there for a while with his mangled body, quietly crying for a while, before she finally kissed whatever part of him was still intact and stood up. She told us all, "I've got a job to do, take care of him, girls," and then left. We figured Margaret would take a few days off to be with family and then continue on with life as normal. We figured wrong. Now, when I say Margaret knew everyone, I mean everyone. Right after she left the hospital, Margaret gathered herself up and went to the police with pictures of poor Smokestack and told her story. The same police officers she had watched grow up over the last 20 years, from rowdy middle schoolers she used to help babysit to the officers they were today. They were absolutely shocked to hear what had happened to their surrogate grandma and pushed her case to the front of the line. The case found itself before a judge whose daughter had gone to school with Margaret's daughter. The judge granted an emergency dangerous animal extraction warrant to her neighbors. Of course, there was a hearing within 2 weeks, which I got to admit was ridiculously fast. The neighbors tried to argue that their dogs weren't aggressive. They even went so far as to accuse Margaret of having it out for their family and making it all up. But their argument trickled when the dozens of dangerous animal reports were presented, and finally completely dried out when Margaret presented the surveillance video her grandson had gotten showing the dogs coming into her property and attacking poor Smokestack. The emergency extraction and humane destruction of her neighbor's dogs was granted. It was Christmas Eve when Margaret heard a knock on her door. She opened it up to see the neighbors standing there sobbing uncontrollably. They were begging her to stop animal control, that they had these dogs since they were puppies, how the kids would be devastated and it would ruin Christmas, and if she could find it in her heart to give the dogs another chance. Up until this moment, the neighbors had behaved abominably. They didn't offer to fix the garage, they never apologized for trying to slander her name in court. Hell, they didn't even pay for Smokestack to be cremated. At no point had they even shown the slightest shred of remorse for what damage their dogs had done. And as the neighbors stood there blubbering and whimpering about how this was going to ruin their Christmas, Margaret looked them straight in the eye and told them in her calmest voice, "You took away my family, so now I'm taking away yours," and shut the door in their face just as animal control pulled up onto the driveway. Margaret was not surprised as she watched the dogs get hauled into the truck and taken away. After all, it was her idea for animal control to take the dogs on Christmas Eve, a perk from having known the AC officer supervisor for years. Margaret even made sure the dogs were euthanized before the outside Christmas lights turned on that night. The family never received the remains, nor did they ever get a chance to bring another animal into their family, as the father proceeded to drive drunk into a telephone pole that same night, killing him instantly. Mom went off the deep end, so CPS picked up the kids by February, and ultimately the house was foreclosed in September. Despite how traumatic Smokestack's death was, I'd like to think that if the neighbors had shown at least some regret, Margaret might not have gone as far as she did. She was/is still the person to forgive and forget. Or maybe she ultimately knew it had to be done, to push it to this point of no return before another family lost a member to these irresponsible neighbors. Either way, thank you, Margaret, for making the world a little bit safer for the pets in the world, and rest in peace, Smokestack. Hopefully, I'll see you on the other side with your favorite orange sock and a can of tuna. I don't like that the dogs were euthanized. It's not the dog's fault. They were raised as puppies by bad neighbors who did not train them well. Pit bulls are not a bad breed. I hate when people say that. I have a Shar-Pei pit bull mix. She is the sweetest, most loving animal I have ever known. She is a darling. And I wish the dogs could have just been taken away and rehomed somewhere and maybe retrained. I know sometimes once it gets to that point, it's hard. I don't know, but I hate that they're euthanized. And so I refuse to fully side with Margaret here. Like, it's super wrong what happened, and the fact those neighbors did nothing and her cat died also breaks my heart, but I'm not going to celebrate 2 dogs getting killed just because it's in revenge for a cat getting killed and then a family falling apart. I mean, hopefully the kids are okay now, but this story just sucks. Story 1. Am I the a-hole for being upset that I'm not involved in my brother's wedding, which I am paying for? I, 31 female, have a brother, 29 male, and he's getting married next year. We lost our mom in 2012 and our dad in 2016. We are each other's only living relatives. I have a good job. I earn a lot of money, £150,000 per year. My brother also has a good job, but doesn't earn anywhere near as much, £35,000. We are raised to always look after each other and share. My partner and I are child-free. Over the years, I've paid for my brother's master's degree, paid the down payment on his house our parents rented so there's no family home. I will also be paying for my future sister-in-law, 26 female, and my brother to have future rounds of in vitro fertilization. Sister-in-law works part-time and earns about $15,000 a year. Her parents are not well off. My brother asked if I could contribute to the cost of the wedding. I said I'd pay for it as it is small with 100 guests and set up a wedding account for them into which I put £25,000, which they both have access to. Sister-in-law's entire family are involved as bridesmaids and groomsmen. My husband and I are guests. Brother and sister-in-law have been going around venues with her family, and I get emailed the costing if it's selected. I told my brother I don't mind paying for the wedding, but I feel really weird that everyone else is involved in the decision and I'm just involved with paying. Brother has said that I'm not our parents, I can't replace our parents, and that's why I'm not involved. Why can't I just do something nice without making him feel crap? I feel like an a-hole for causing drama, but also feel taken advantage of. Am I the a-hole? Okay, so on one hand, there is the whole just because you've offered to pay for something doesn't mean that you should therefore get to be a part of that thing. It was your offer to make, and so I don't think that your brother is under an obligation to involve you in the wedding. I am, however, absolutely shocked that he wouldn't have you involved in the wedding. That seems like such a D move. Seriously, you've provided so much for him and his fiancée, and you're the only family each other has, and he doesn't want you as part of the wedding. I don't know. He has the right to not want to do that. I question that, that's just, I don't think you're an a-hole for being hey, it feels kind of weird that I'm not. I don't even think it's the money thing, necessarily. I feel even if you didn't contribute any money as the only family, especially if the fiancé is involving, all of her family, you would think the brother would want his sister there. I mean, I don't know what's going on with the family and all that stuff, but, ugh. Story 2. Call bylaw on me because I'm too sick to mow my grass? Enjoy your view of my 8-foot fence. So the call about the long grass was kind of a last straw thing. The backstory is my grandpa passed away 2 years ago and I moved into his house. He was pretty healthy, but he let the yard go down a bit. The grass was maintained, but the trees were overgrown, his pond and patio was dirty, etc. Our neighbors years ago sold their property to a property builder. Our properties are in an L shape, so our neighbor was using our backyard as her virtual backyard. For the past 2 years, I've been trying my best to maintain the backyard while also working and dealing with my grandpa's stuff. Well, for the past few weeks, the backyard has fallen a bit as stress from work has creeped in and I was sick for a few weeks. Before this, my neighbor has always had nitpicks, but I mostly ignored them, but they rang my door one day to complain about a mess in the back, and I told them I have a life outside this house. If it bugs you that much, you're more than welcome to do the work. Following that, bylaw came by, and they were very understanding about my situation and gave me more than enough time to feel better and mow the lawn. Well, that whole thing peed me off, and I wanted to get the typical white picket fence as there wasn't a fence, and we were passively looking for a dog. So I decided screw it, and built the largest fence I could, and since her house was right on the property line, she now looks out the window, and instead of seeing my backyard, she sees just a wood fence. Yeah, I mean, if she's gonna crab about, the state of your backyard, well, now she doesn't have to be angry about it anymore. She'll never have to see it again. I think that's a legitimate way of dealing with that, Sounds like a bit of a pain in the butt neighbor. And I mean, I've said it before, I'll say it again. Neighbors, just be nice to each other. Don't be nitpicky. Don't let little things allow you to create these weird feuds and divides and stuff. Just learn to let some stuff go. Obviously, there's a line, they had like a bubbling pool of toxic waste back there. Yeah, maybe say something or call the bylaws. I don't know. But the rest of the time, just chill out. Just grab a beer, sit down, relax. Story 1. Am I the a-hole for telling a guy what I do for work and letting him pay for my drinks during the whole evening? My friend Grace invited me to a board game bar to play and have drinks with her, her boyfriend, and one of their friends, Nick. We went to get drinks in pairs, Grace going with her boyfriend. Meanwhile, Nick and I stayed at the table and vice versa. So Nick and I had plenty of time to talk, just the two of us. Nick started the night by telling about his recent career change. He decided to quit his previous job, go on a coding boot camp, and he got a job as a developer 1 or 2 months ago. He was very proud of himself and his new salary and told me this multiple times. He never asked me what I do for work, but talked about his new job quite a lot, occasionally saying, "Sorry, you don't understand that." During the entire evening, I never told him I've been working as a software engineer for the past 4 years, because he never asked, and honestly, I found it a bit entertaining. When it came to the drinks, he invited me to every single one. "Don't worry about it, it's not a problem with my developer salary." I told him multiple times he doesn't have to pay for me, but he insisted. At the end of the night, when we were saying our goodbyes, he took out his phone and sent me a friend request on Facebook. My job is listed in my profile, so that was when he realized that I'm a software engineer. He asked me if it's true that I'm a software engineer, and I answered yes. He asked me why I hadn't told him. Why did I let him believe I was a cashier like Grace used to be? I never implied that. And why did I let him pay for everything when I probably earn more than him? I told him that he never once asked, and it was his fault he assumed. He could have simply asked me about my job, but he only wanted to brag about it. But if he wants me to, I can pay him back for the drinks. He was angry and said I made a fool out of him. I think he did that, not me. But now Grace and her boyfriend are on his side too, saying that it would have cost me nothing to tell him early in the evening, and I only kept it for myself for my own entertainment. Well, I did find it entertaining, but I don't really feel like I did anything wrong. Am I the a-hole? I'm gonna kind of put blame on both parties here. Like, on one side, I think it is his fault for not asking any questions and just assuming things about this person. Like, it's granted, I also think that he's very excited to have this new job and just wanted to talk about it. It's what's on his mind. So he's maybe a little forgetful about that. I'm not saying he's a jerk for not asking, but, I mean, it's the polite thing to do. It's kind of on him. And the fact that he was always paying for drinks, and she was like, "You really don't have to. I can pay for myself." And he's like, No, I got that engineer money." It's like, well, then that's kind of on you, She let you know that, no, I have money of my own. But also, I think it's a little bit on you. You admit that it was, it was entertaining for you. And it would take very little when he's talking about engineering and saying, "Oh, you wouldn't understand that," for you to go, "Well, no, actually, I work in software engineering. I know all about it." So I don't think you're blameless. I don't think you're necessarily an a-hole for this. I think you both kind of goofed. And I think it's pretty harmless. So yeah, I don't know. I don't know why people are making a big deal about it. I don't know why he's like so upset. So yeah, I don't know. This doesn't feel like a big deal. Story 2. Don't like my silly job? You don't get its silly perks. So I work in technical theater as an assistant stage manager. There are a couple of theaters in the area, but the tech community is rather small, so we all know each other. I work for a smaller theater, but I know a few people who work at the largest theater that hosts the traveling Broadway shows. These shows are really popular and hard to get tickets for if you aren't a season ticket holder, and season tickets can run about $1,000 per seat for 7 shows. Tickets are normally about $150 for an individual show, but can go up significantly if they know the show's going to be popular. The husband of one of the directors that I work with is on the board of the theater and sometimes can score good seats at a discounted rate. This season, Aladdin is coming to town, a show my future mother-in-law has been dying to see. She asked me if I could possibly get her and a friend a seat so that they could go see it. I called in a favor with my director, and she managed to get 2 prime seats. Since her husband is on the board, she gets a discount, so the tickets ended up only being $75 for the 2 seats. I reserved them in my name with the understanding that future mother-in-law will pay for the tickets. Fast forward a couple of weeks, and future mother-in-law invites me and my fiancé over for dinner. Dinner goes well, and I end up in a conversation with future mother-in-law and future sister-in-law about housework. I don't know why. Future sister-in-law is a teacher, and she's married to an accountant, so she said that her and her husband tried to split the chores 50-50. Future mother-in-law thought that was fine and asked how fiancé and I would do it. We don't currently live together. I said, probably the same, 50-50. Future sister-in-law agreed, but future mother-in-law gave me the stink eye. I asked if there was something wrong, and she said, well, fiancé works full-time and you don't, so I don't see how that's fair. I told her that I do work full-time, just not at a 9-to-5 like fiancé. Future mother-in-law then laughed at me and said what I did wasn't real work, and that it was just a silly side gig, and that maybe if I got a real job, I would know what it's like to really work. Then she changed the subject. This peed me off because I am very proud of the work I do. I may not be a 9-to-5, but I love my job. It is my dream job, and I do make enough to cover my expenses. It actually takes a certain amount of skill to properly stage manage a full-scale production. So, enter pettiness. I called up the box office for the large theater and told them to cancel the tickets. They were in my name, so they gladly canceled them. I then texted family and told her if she thinks my job isn't real, then the side perks aren't real, so the tickets were canceled. I then shut off my phone. The next day, when I turn on my phone, I see several missed calls and about a dozen texts from family. She is fuming because her friend is coming into town specifically to see this play. I called back and told her she might still be able to get seats if she called the box office. She ended up getting seats, but they cost her $150 each and they weren't as good. Hopefully she's learned not to insult someone and still expect to benefit from them. Okay, to this future mother-in-law, not only is being an assistant stage manager a real job, it is a tough job, a demanding job. There is a lot of stuff that stage managers, assistant managers, and all the tech crew on theater have to do. I've done quite a bit of just community theater. This isn't even professional level stuff, This is stuff that we've done, just locally or whatever. And a lot goes into that. The people on the tech side of things work their butt off. And to work as a job as an assistant stage manager is so much more. And I have a ton of respect for them. I have mostly just been on the acting side of things, and I could not have done anything without all the work they put in. So folks, treat the tech, treat the managers and all that with so much respect because they are the reason that theater happens. Without them, you just end up with just a messy disaster. So show them a little respect, future mother-in-law. You are lucky that she didn't call in a favor and say, and also don't sell any tickets to this person. That makes me mad. Story 1. Am I the a-hole for refusing to punish or allow my wife to punish our son? This all started back in March. My son's best friend turned 13. In his family, 13th birthday is a huge deal. In addition to a massive party, which all 4 of us were invited to, his parents also took him to Disney World. They invited my son to attend as well. My wife was hesitant to consent to this. She said it was unfair to allow our son to go when our 9-year-old daughter can't, especially since she loves Disney and princesses. I said that our kids won't always have the exact same opportunities, and if we set a precedent here, we'll have to stick to it and when our daughter gets a similar opportunity. So we'd just be punishing both our children needlessly. My wife reluctantly agreed that we should allow our son to go. I gave our son money to buy his sister souvenirs. He did, and his friend's parents even bought extra stuff for him to give to her. Still, when she saw him come back wearing a Star Wars shirt with the Mickey hat and trading pin lanyard, she burst into tears. My wife later said we made a huge mistake and never should have let him go. I mistakenly thought all of that was behind us. Now we're not well off financially, but my brother-in-law is, and he invited all of us to visit a beach house he rented for a summer send-off. My wife told me she wants to have our son stay with my dad and just take our daughter to even the score. I told my wife that isn't happening. We are their parents. We can't favor one child over the other. Not being invited to the birthday trip of a kid you barely know is in no way comparable to being left out of a family vacation, and I'm shocked she would even suggest such a thing. I refuse to allow it. Now my wife is angry, but I don't care. I'm not punishing my son for being lucky. Am I the a-hole? You can't keep trying to balance the scales between every little thing that your kids are getting for opportunities. They're going to get older and have different lives and different experiences. And to literally say well, you got to go on a trip because you were friends with this kid, and so now you don't get to go on family vacation. That's nuts. What if you have more fun on the family vacation? Or what if you have less fun on the family vacation? Does he get left out of the next one too because he had too much fun at Disney World and you guys didn't have as much fun at the beach or whatever? It rained one day. So nope, he's still got one day that he has to miss on vacation. Do you see how ridiculous this all gets? You can't do that. Your children have to learn to deal with some disappointment in the world. You cannot keep everything perfectly balanced, Thanos. So yeah, no, I don't think the person posting this is the a-hole. I don't think that the mom is either, but I think she needs to actually really stop and think about just how out of control that line of thinking really is. Story 2, entitled Parents Ask Me to Remove My Prosthetic. For a bit of background, I, 24 male, am half-deaf on my left side due to a birth defect. I also have a misshaped ear due to a combination of birth defects and surgeries to repair it. When I got a bit older, I started wearing a prosthetic ear on that side to cover it up. It wasn't perfect, but it looked better than what I originally had. Unfortunately, though, these types of prosthetics don't last forever and have to be replaced every so often as the color begins to fade and it tears around the edges. It is removable. I was due for a new one and was just waiting on my insurance to approve it before the prosthetist sent it to me. For the actual story, I was working in a pediatric emergency room at the time and had just received an order to perform an EKG on a roughly 8 to 10-year-old patient. When I walked in the room and began to introduce myself to the family, mom, dad, and the patient, the mother looked up at me and gasped. I was taken aback and asked her what was wrong. She told me, "Your ear is really freaking me out. Is it supposed to be some kind of Halloween costume or something? It seems inappropriate for a children's hospital." Mind you, it was only October 2nd or 3rd. I explained to her that I have a disability for which I wear a prosthetic. She then asked me to take it off because it's making me uncomfortable. I politely declined because it's held on by medical glue and not so easy to take on and off. I proceeded to do my job and perform the EKG, but throughout the procedure, the father decided to repeatedly probe me for personal information, asking me things like, "Are you sure you're qualified to do this?" and "How long did you go to school before this job?" I answered his questions, but could very obviously tell that he was insinuating I was mentally disabled and shouldn't be working in this field. I finished the procedure as quickly as I could and left. Not saying anything to the parents, but did wish the child well. I gave the report to the bedside nurse and asked her not to call me for this patient unless they absolutely needed to. I kept my mouth shut at the time, but in retrospect, I wish I had spoken up for myself more. Some people just have no respect for those with disabilities. What rude, gross people. And I feel like I've read a story like this before, or maybe it's a repeat. I don't know. We don't have time. Look, don't do this. I'm sorry if it's unusual for you to see a prosthetic, but to ask someone to take it off because it makes you uncomfortable, what if that person said, "Oh, don't look at me. I hate the way your face looks. It's gross." You would be offended by that, right? Don't say this kind of stuff to people, and do not start prodding doctors and stuff like that because you don't trust them in that way. Like that, oh my God, just a gross family, being gross. That poor kid is being raised by some extremely rude people, and boy, I hope that that child does not take on those traits. Story 3. I published a poem about my ex in a literary magazine he'd been trying to get into for years. We were both in high school, and at the end of the relationship, he told me he was just in it for the intercourse, that he didn't really mean any of it, and that I obviously just wanted him because I was horny. He then went and had a hot and heavy makeout sesh with my best friend and came back and told me I was a bad kisser compared to her. Yeah, he was a jerk. Well, flashback to a few months previous, I was angry at him because he was being really hot and cold, and so I wrote an angry poem about him. The magazine he had been trying to get into had a website and would publish poems based off of popularity on the website. He had gotten me to join a few months previous, and I had only had a few poems up. I decided against posting it then because it would be too mean. Well, after he had pulled that crap, I decided I wanted a little revenge, so I posted the poem, and suddenly it was getting a lot of popularity. And I get a notification from the magazine saying they want to publish it. So what was the first thing I did? Messaged him that I got published in this magazine. He got excited for me and congratulated me until he read the poem. Several million people have read the poem in the magazine, and to this day, he still hasn't gotten published. Man, why we got so many gross people? Like, what a D-bag of a person. Oh my God. Like, the fact that all he got in, comeuppance was a nasty poem published about him, and in a magazine he wanted to get published in, he still hasn't. I guess that's pretty good. But man, oh man, I feel like also, I want karma to really hit him back because he sounds like an absolute sleaze. Just a gross person. To literally tell someone, I was just in it for the intercourse? Gross. What a gross human. If I ever heard that a friend of mine said that to someone, I would not be friends with them anymore. Immediately. I don't care if we had been friends for a decade. I'd be like, oh, you're a bad person. Bye. Story 1. Am I the a-hole for pouring my husband's sweet tea down the drain? So, it's been a few days since my original post. Everyone was so kind, helpful, and supportive. I received so many messages, and I want to thank each one of you for them. They meant more to me than you know. Well, I've left my husband, and it really wasn't over this one incident, but really a buildup of many. Before I even made the post, I wasn't completely blind to what he had been doing in terms of control. As weird as it seems, sometimes I just forget I'm an adult and I don't have to just say yes sir and listen to any man's that's older than me. I'm an adult now. I make my own rules. I feel sick saying this, but I realize I've been viewing him as a parental figure and not a partner. It kind of makes my stomach twist to even type that, but that is what it is. I don't really want to analyze it right now. It's too gross. I'm honestly going through a really tough grieving time right now. I feel like such a failure. What's worse is that he does not care in the least. When I called him to tell him I was leaving, he said, "Okay, let me know when you want to grab your stuff. We can have you moved out ASAP." And that was it. That was all he said before he hung up the phone. I'm really hurting. I love him so much, and I think part of me just wanted to see if he was willing to fight for me and apologize. He was not, so that's that. But although I'm hurting, I feel free. My mom has welcomed me back. She's so happy I'm divorcing him. I got together with my friends who he wouldn't let me see. I watched TV shows he told me were too childish, and I've been wearing ugly sweatpants and oversized shirts that he always said made me look like a man. So thank you, all of you. I got a wake-up call I desperately needed. I don't even want to be a housewife. I never wanted that for me. No hate on anyone who does. Honestly, guys, it was hard and lonely work. I'm going to get my RN, and then. Well, we kind of missed the main story to this. I didn't get that in my script, but what I do see is a person realizing that they have value as a human being and deserve to be treated as such. And I'm thrilled to see that. No one deserves to be treated the way that this guy was apparently treating her. And also, don't feel like a failure when this happens, folks, because it happens to so many people, and it's because people like this are good at manipulating and or controlling other people. It's what they do. And they just get you tied in with all of your emotions and good feelings. They know how to control people. It's like feeling bad if you lost a tennis match against Andre Agassi. Does anyone still know who Andre Agassi is? He's big in tennis when I was younger. But you shouldn't feel bad about trusting and loving someone. That's not a failure on your part. It is 100% a failure on their part. And being able to realize that and overcome what they've done to you and leave them and live your life just makes you a success. Story 2. I don't care if he needs emergency surgery. My daughter is more important. So this just happened last night, Friday the 13th. I had been having some pretty bad abdominal pain since the 12th. Well, yesterday I went to a local clinic and found out I had appendicitis. The clinic called an ambulance and I was transported to the big hospital. When I got there, they took me to a room, had me stripped buck naked and run me to the OR. As we were moving through the ER, this Karen stopped us and asked why I was being rushed before her daughter since they had been here longer. The nurse told her that I was being rushed for emergency surgery. She said, I don't care if my daughter's in pain and he needs to wait his turn. The nurse said, ma'am, your daughter has a sprained ankle and that this gentleman could die. She reluctantly moved out of the way when she saw a couple police officers start walking toward her. Well, the surgery went great and I didn't die. Was released at 12 this afternoon. Edit. Holy crap, didn't expect this to blow up like it did. Thanks for all the well wishes. Why are there people who are interfering with medical professionals who are trying to save people's lives? Why are these people doing this so often? Oh, but my kid's here first. You're not in line to buy tickets for something. You're interfering with surgery. You're interfering with a life-threatening situation. Literally, you standing there delaying things could be the catalyst for a human being dying. And if they do die, I hope you go to jail because you're a bad, bad person and I don't want you in society killing other people. Story 3. Entitled Mom says she will sue me for stealing her baby's art. Entitled Aunt threatens to sue me over stealing her baby's art. Oh my God, I cannot believe this just happened. I can't post pictures, but I'm going to post the conversation. This thread doesn't allow pictures. Below. I hate my life, oh God. This is a text exchange that I copied and pasted right from my text. I'm 17 and entitled cousin is 19, both female. Me. Post a picture of my drawing on Instagram, then it automatically gets reported for fraud. The following exchange then happens. Entitled cousin. Are you effing serious? Me. What? You know that I also draw, so do thousands of other people, entitled cousin. You can only paint. I'm the only person in the family that can draw, animate, or digital. What? Okay, listen, this is getting stupid. You got what you wanted and I deleted my TikTok. You're not just going to attack me because of the fact that I also draw. I'm going to tell my mom because she doesn't think you should be an artist either. My mom says that I'm the only artist in the family. I'm going to tell my mom. You are 19. Entitled Aunt then text me. Peyton, this is Entitled Aunt. I think this is really getting out of hand. Entitled Cousin is really upset. I won't tell your parents as long as you agree to not sell that drawing. You're going to ruin Entitled Cousin's chances of becoming an artist. Please, just take into consideration she is older than you. Therefore, she should choose to be an artist before you did. You will always have to be in second place. I'm sorry, that's just how social conduct works. All right, Entitled Aunt. What's sad is I know that Entitled Cousin actually had to have her mom text me because she doesn't know what half of those words mean. Well, this has been a nice conversation. I shall be telling my parents about this interaction. Then it went quiet for a bit. Then I got this last text that I was not expecting. Peyton, you cannot sell your art of animated characters because that's what Entitled Cousin does. How dare you draw Stitch? You cannot make drawings of Entitled Character's favorite Disney character and sell it because if you sell it, you will have to give the money to Entitled Cousin. You do not have the right to take business away from my child because she deserves it more than you. Entitled Aunt, I made a poster. I can sell it if I want to, and no, I do not have to give the money to your daughter. I shall be selling the drawing for $20-ish, and you won't see a cent. Please leave me alone. I will be telling my parents about this. I will sue you because that money belongs to my child, not you because you stole her art. I stopped responding. What the hell? The entitlement is real. God help me. Just FYI, I don't actually plan on selling this art. If you do, I will offer you something else because of Disney's rights. Update. I told my cousin about the fact that so many people wanted to buy it and she freaked out. I just got this message. Did you sell it? Because you owe me the money from it. You are so spoiled. You do not deserve to have the money. You cannot even draw. God, you're such a pain because you have absolutely no right to take that money away from me. She blocked me. What the hell? Like, if this is actually real, entitled cousin, you're terrible and you are so absolutely insecure about art that I doubt you're very good. If you're so focused on other people, like, the insecurity has to show, like, oh my gosh, get over yourself. And to the aunt, you're an adult. I mean, both of them are adults, but entitled aunt, you're an older adult. What is wrong with you? What have you told your daughter to let her become this gross entitled person? You're not a very good parent. You're not a very good person, really. You're a terrible aunt. Holy cow. Take a little time to self-reflect on everything. This is ridiculous. How dare you draw Stitch? That belongs to my daughter, Cindy Disney.
Please leave your story in the comments. I would love to make a video on them in the future. Also, don't forget to like and subscribe.